Hey y'all, editing Marquita here, and I just want to give a little bit of a preface to what you guys are about to see. So I'm just going to be sharing my life updates, which includes the fact that my apartment flooded. You guys have probably seen me mention that in a couple of other videos at this point. But I just want to say that in short, I'm sharing, that with you, but when I initially recorded that video, it ended up being about 50 minutes because I not only shared about the flood, but I also shared about my experience with my property management at the complex where I was living when that happened. And so I just decided it was more of like a venting session, but I just decided to go ahead and shorten it up and just kind of stick to more of the basics of just sharing like with you guys the experience of what I experienced in terms of the actual event of the flood. And just to sum up my experience with the complex and more so the property management or manager per se. In this way I can, shorten the video and take a whole bunch of excess stuff out with all the explicit details of everything. But the situation, of course, when like a pipe bursts or you experience something like a flood or some kind of natural disaster within your, in your housing that impacts your housing, your life, whatever, it can be stressful. And my whole thing was, no one can predict the fact that, a pipe's going to burst or whatever. Do I feel like things could have been done in terms of more preventative maintenance or better preventative maintenance? To prevent the situation from happening or to happening to the extent to which it did? Absolutely. I do feel like the property management company as well as the or more so the property management company failed to do that. And so as a result, it was an old building already, and you can tell that they did not invest a lot of money in when it came to upkeep and repairs. They did more of fixing it after something happened versus like trying to do preventative steps for major things. I'm not saying they didn't do any preventative maintenance for anything, but for example, when I first moved in, I was there for roughly for 2 years. I did 2 lease terms there. I think it was a 13-month lease, and then I did 11-month lease because I wanted to be able to go ASAP, but also the shorter leases were super expensive. I'm like, this place is definitely not worth what I would have had to pay to just extend it for like 3 months or something after my initial lease ended. And given that I knew I wanted to relocate and kind of make a major move, more so like not just in the area, probably move to either to the neighboring state or to a further away city. So I want to have time to make an informed decision when it came to that. So I did renew for another 11 months. And, during that time, things did change, and I guess you could say they changed for the better. There were 3 property managers in that short time frame that I was there, again, roughly 2 years. So my issue with the whole situation when it comes down to the company as well as the property manager, and I say it's both of them because the property manager, yes, some of it was on her in terms of how she communicated and how she handles business, but at the same time, some of the things that she was doing came from above her. She was getting advice or guidance from her superiors. So that's why I say it comes down to both both groups, her as well as the company as a whole. And so I do want to say that I reached out to when this initially happened. It was on December 29th, so we're still in the Christmas holidays. The property manager as well as some of the other staff, in the upper level in the corporate office or whatnot, they were all on vacation, which that's perfectly normal, whatever. It's Christmas holidays. That's to be expected. But my issue was that when something like that happens in your building, or if you're a property manager, even if you are, private residence property manager, maybe you have a house or something that you're renting out to tenants, if something like that happens, your vacation is over. Or at least, somebody from each level. So for me, the property manager's vacation should have been over. Now, I'm not saying she had to necessarily return because I don't think she was, in town or whatever. I'm not saying she had to catch a flight back to, to be there, because there's nothing she could do on that very moment. But in terms of her work ethic and communication, like, her vacation should have been over, meaning you should have been on top of it. You should have been communicating with whoever you needed to communicate with, and also the superiors should have been available at that point. So, because I got a lot of this person's on vacation, the office is closed, meaning the corporate offices, and that those things are closed. So my property manager couldn't get in contact with people because they weren't available. They were on vacation and whatnot. And so that trickled down to me. And when people were getting back, it was last minute stuff. There was no real timeline. There was no plan laid out on XYZ steps are going to happen. I was told a couple of times by the property manager as well as the leasing staff, this is the first time we've had anything like this happen. I get that. Okay. I understand that means that you might not know right at the top of your head what the next steps are, but that means you need to talk to somebody who does, because somebody in the company knows. So that person needs to be available, because these things do happen. It's an emergency situation. So there should be somebody available when some emergency or something goes wrong. That person needs to be available, just like a doctor that's on call. If a doctor is on call and they're on vacation, guess what? Their vacation is over and they have to do what they need to do. And I feel like that was my issue with this community and with this company. Again, this is Van Meter Properties. The company is Van Meter. This is the issue that I had, is that there was no sense of urgency. Like, this is an emergency situation. Like, prior to my apartment dealing with that flood, the same thing had happened in the same week earlier on a different floor. I stay on the third floor. Something else had another flood due to a pipe bursting happened on the first floor. That was either like the day after Christmas or whatnot. So these things had just happened. And so you should have been, one, on guard that something's going on. And two, that's when things should have been getting put into place. Instead, all these last minute decisions are being made. There's a lot of pressure put on me to do things in a very short turnaround time, which is really unrealistic for me as a single individual to have to do some of the things that they were asking. And there was no consideration for that. There was no consideration for the fact that, yeah, I was on vacation too. And guess what? My vacation ended the day that pipe burst and my apartment flooded. So therefore, everyone else that needed to have something to do with that, their vacation should have been over. So that is the issue that I had with Van Meter in terms of how they handled the situation. The property manager that was, that person that is the property manager at that, I had an issue with her communication because she failed to do it. She didn't communicate properly. When I asked for information, it was always, as if I was bothering, or, why was I making things difficult? Because I was questioning things. I was questioning when I was told to do things, at the last minute with no turnaround time. I was questioning, why I couldn't get certain information, because I sent a very lengthy email requesting 7, I believe, specific items or pieces of information that was sent, I want to say like January 2nd, to the property manager. And to this day, I have never received a response, even though me and her spoke several times in person. And I always referred back to that email and asked her to send me that information. And she, mentioned the fact that she wasn't sure she was authorized, or due to their policies, if she could answer some of those questions. And I said, okay, if there's something on there that I'm asking for that you are not able to respond to and provide that information, then just state that. Just say, I can't provide this due to, I'm not authorized, or due to, our company policies, whatever the case may be. That's fine. Then put that in writing and say that you can't and why you can't. That's all I'm asking you to do. She never responded to that. So that to me is a red flag that, one, decisions are being made that weren't necessarily legit, as the way that she was presenting them, as if I had to do certain things at a certain time because of XYZ. And I feel like she lied to some extent, because she was just trying to get it done. And I don't think she knew what she was doing, and she may have had no to very little guidance on what to do. One of the things I requested was the policy, or, the protocol that Van Meter has for when these situations happen. Like, what are the steps outlined? So do you mean to tell me that there's nothing that a property manager can refer to when these things happen? It shouldn't have to be a person necessarily available in corporate when your building floods, if it catches on fire, if some other, natural disaster happens. There should be some kind of handbook or protocol outline that explains that to your property managers so that they know what to do. I don't think that was never answered. So who knows if that exists or not? To me, that's a liability and that's negligent. If you didn't train your staff properly, that's negligent, because you have someone that's in a position who's not properly trained and knowledgeable about the position. That's a problem. So that is the issue that I have with how my situation was handled. And it added a lot of stress that didn't have to be. Like, it's a stressful situation in general, but then the fact that you had people that didn't know what they were doing, or that were making decisions that may or may not have been the best or needed, or the time frame or whatnot. But as a result, it resulted in them, one, losing me as a tenant, never having a desire to live at another Van Meter property. And also, I'll be sharing that experience with anybody that ever asked. And there were people who were potentially looking at those apartments. And when they asked my opinion, I gave them the honest opinion. And I will note that I stayed in another Van Meter property prior to this one, and I didn't have any issues. So I do believe that there are a lot of things internally that need to be fixed, both at that particular complex, but also within the corporate levels of Van Meter. So that's just what I wanted to put out there to give you guys a little bit of backstory. And I'm basically taking all of the rest of that out of this video, and I'm just going to share, my footage of what actually happened in my apartment on the day of the flood, and give just a little bit of backstory about, what the end result was in terms of where I'm at now. So hope you guys, I guess, enjoy my little story time. The end of 2022 went out on a very unexpected note, and the beginning of 2023 was also just and by beginning, I mean the entire month of January. So as you may notice, I'm in another new setting. If you guys did see the few videos that I posted last month, I was in a hotel, and now we're going to get into the story of why that was the case. So on December 29th, which was a Thursday, December 29th, 2022, at around 7:15 a.m., I was awakened from my slumber to a roaring sound. At first I thought, oh, it's a heavy wind, storm, something going on. And you guys that have seen my videos, you've seen the windows in my living room and stuff. It's the same way in my bedroom, where it's literally like a wall of windows, very easy to see out of, very big bright windows. So I looked out the window and I'm like, the weather is fine. There's no rain, there's no wind, nothing. So I'm like, where's the sound coming from? Because at first I thought, okay, maybe the heat is just being extra loud, because it sounded like, you guys know when the heat first comes on and you hear just kind of like that whoosh kind of through the wall or whatever, like that's what it sounded like, but it was constant, like it was still going. So then I get up out of my bed and I start walking toward my living room, and it's getting louder. And then I hit the kitchen, and there is a waterfall coming down over my microwave and dishwasher. The pipe had burst, and that water was just like, it was literally like a waterfall, and it was so loud because that's how much water was coming. It was like somebody just turned on a spigot and it was just coming in. So I'm going to go ahead and insert some video footage of that. So one, you can hear it because it does come through on the video pretty well. And just so you can see what I was talking about. So now that you've seen that footage, you see what I saw at 7 something in the morning. Most of my stuff that was my storage stuff was in plastic containers, like the storage containers, or in those Ziploc vacuum bags. If you've ever wondered if those Ziploc vacuum bags are worth it or if they really work, the answer is yes, because I had a quilt in one. I had some other extra bedding and sheets for like when I have guests or whatnot in some others. And all of my items were completely dry. So shout out to Ziploc vacuum bags, because they held up. And I mean, it rained on the ceiling, collapsed in above that area, and water just like and it was waterfall raining in there on top of that stuff. So fortunately for me, those things were in a Ziploc vacuum bag, because otherwise they would have been completely ruined. My apartment was on the 3rd floor, and like I said, that water, as you guys saw in the video, was standing, and it absorbed shortly after. Once they cut the water off and everything, it absorbed within a few minutes. And I'm like, where did that water go? Well, apparently it made its way down to the gym, and so it completely destroyed, and probably the person, if there was somebody under me, oops, sorry to you guys, but you know, it caused damage below me. I could say that. Like, y'all gonna see me celebrating myself because I am proud of me. Okay, Q, Drake, and Nikki, because I'm so proud of me. Okay, because I did so much on my own in such a short period of time, and so 0 stars do not recommend. But I did what I had to do, and I was able to do it, and so I'm amazed that I got it all done. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.